What is good, Osiris? Here, stuck in the middle, and that ominous sound that you hear beating in the background is the sound of war drums. Joe Biden weighs deploying thousands of troops to Eastern Europe and Baltics. The president is also considering deploying warships and aircraft to NATO allies in what would be a major shift from its restrained stance on Ukraine. It's escalating. It's basically getting to the point where it feels inevitable that we are going to see some type of conflict. The only question is going to be is how big of one. When you talk about Russia, this is direct with Russia. Usually we're fighting these proxy wars through third world countries with Russia and China. This is direct with Russia. This is serious stuff. But maybe Saki could step in and recommend that the Ukrainians just take a kickboxing class and have a margarita. Let them eat cake. I thought Trump was the problem. Remember, Trump was the one that was going to get us into a World War III. Remember, Trump was the one who was a Russian ally. Glenn Greenwald tweets, how come Russia annexed Crimea under Obama and is now threatening Ukraine under Biden? Instead of doing all that when they had a puppet in the White House who they controlled through blackmail. Remember? That was the story about Donald Trump. When will the US media acknowledge that this was a demented and insane conspiracy theory? It just doesn't add up. It just doesn't make sense. People were saying, we have an adult back in the room. We have adults back in the White House. I can go to sleep at night. Well, the EU is not following the US in withdrawing its diplomats' families from Ukraine. Top European diplomat Josep Borrell says, adding there is no need to dramatize the situation while diplomatic talks with Russia continue. So it looks like they don't feel like the adults in the US room are worth following. Jack Posavec tweeted, Ukraine just slammed US for pulling diplomatic families from Kiev. The EU announced they aren't pulling diplomats. Recently, Germany and France held talks with Russia this week in Paris without the United States. It's fair to say, or fair to ask the question, are Joe Biden and Tony Blinken, are they embarrassing themselves on the world stage right now? I'm not saying Trump is perfect. Trump today weighed in and said, what's happening with Russia and Ukraine would never have happened under the Trump administration, not even a possibility. Thanks, big guy. I appreciate it, but that didn't add much to the conversation. What would I want him to add to the conversation? I would want him to add that we have a movement, a legislative movement called Defend the Guard that people are trying to start throughout the country from the state level. Defend the Guard is legislation that would prohibit a state's National Guard units from being deployed into active combat without a formal declaration of war by Congress as provided by the Constitution already. Force Congress to do their job. We didn't force them to do their job during the pandemic. They haven't authorized military use since 2001, the Iraq War, but they fund the use of military force. They just recently eliminated the filibuster so they could raise the debt ceiling. That's how these wars are funded. You raise the debt ceiling, you can increase spending, or you can borrow off the debt, and you pay for all these weapons, tanks, bombs, deployment, very expensive stuff. And of course, they go to the defense contractors. Before asking America's fighting men and women to do their job, force politicians to put their names on the line. They should have some fear in their heart about their future, whether they vote on this or not, before any boots are on the ground. An example of this legislation, and what can you do? Try to get this legislation. This could be in any state. It's in Maryland. It's in other, I think, Kansas as well. All it says is we prohibit the governor from ordering the militia or a member of the militia into active duty combat unless the U.S. Congress has passed an official declaration of war or taken a certain official action. Is that asking too much? Going back to the Iraq War, Congress doesn't want to put their name on anything because it haunted those to this day. Joe Biden is the most successful person that voted for the Iraq War, eventually, obviously, becoming president. But a lot of them had their careers stalled simply because of that vote. They don't want to put their name on it. And I want to be clear. I sound like Kamala Harris. She always says that. Let me be clear. So let me try to be clear, and Kamala always bumbles after that. So let me not try to do that. I'm not an expert. I'm not claiming to be an expert in foreign policy. I stay in my lane about things that I feel confident about and still leave room to be wrong. So there are people like Josh Manning here who said, I'm not a warmonger. I'm a veteran for peace. He says we have a military for moments like this where we can use our national power to force hyper-militarized oligarchies to think twice about initiating conflict. This might achieve peace too. There's an argument on both sides. My point is Congress needs to vote on it, and every member of Congress should be hightailing it back to their districts to make their case to their people. So I'm not claiming to know either way. I will say it's very hard to convince me that we need to go to Ukraine to defend their border when you haven't defended our own border. That's going to be a tough one. It's tough one for me to defend our defense secretary, who did get confirmed, is a former member of the board of Raytheon, one of the world's largest weapon makers, and is a partner in an investment firm that buys military suppliers. I don't know that anything bad or there has been any wrongdoing here. I do know that there's a conflict of interest. And what are the checks and balances to stop that? It's supposed to be Congress, represented through us, to say yay or nay on war. You have a president who has approval ratings that are tanking. Members of Congress are supposed to be there to say, hey, I know your ratings tanking, but I still want to keep my job and my people aren't for this war. We can't lose track of that. I'll end with this. People were joking after this TikTok, or this video it was from TikTok. This video went viral of Army recruits dancing. And I don't think it's just a video. But what I will say is, if Russia invades Ukraine and Joe Biden's thinking about doing what he's doing, it's not a joke anymore. These are real weapons, real vehicles, and real lives to be lost. Congress, I want you to put your name on this. If people lose their lives, I want you to put your name on it saying it was worth it or not. Let me know what you think. Take care.